Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me and perhaps see me as well. I can hear you, but I don't see you. Thank you very much for accepting my virtual presence there. I wish I could be there in person. Although there is one advantage to just being there virtually. If what I say makes you mad, at least I will not have to run for it. I'm protected by a considerable distance. My contribution to your deliberations will be more or less the following. I would like to consider the climate question in two perspectives. One, three general principles for thinking about climate change, and then within those principles, 10 specific policies. So that's a lot to cover, and I will be brief on each of the points, and then there may be some time for discussion at the end. So that's my plan. First, the general principles. I think it's very useful to remember an observation by a physicist named John Wheeler. He said the following: "We make the world by the questions we ask. We make the world by the questions we ask." So, what are the questions asked by climate models? And what kind of world are they making? And what other questions might we ask that would make other worlds? Could we ask other questions that would make a more tractable world for economic policy? Well, what are the questions? The climate models ask whether CO2 emissions will lead to atmospheric concentrations of 450 to 500 parts per million, and will that raise temperatures by 2 or 3 degrees Celsius by a certain date, and what will be the likely consequences in climate and geography, and in what sequence, and according to what probability distributions, and what will be the damages inflicted by such changes, as well as the costs of abating them, and what are the ratios of present values of damage costs compared to abatement expenditures at various discount rates, and which discount rate should we use? And finally, how likely is it that the new information learned while we're constructing the model will invalidate the results of the model and require starting over? Well, what kind of a world is created by such questions? I fear that it is a world of such enormous uncertainty and complexity as to paralyze policy, or almost so. Scientists will disagree on the answers to every one of these empirical questions. Could we then ask a different question, a question that creates a different world? Why not ask instead, can we systematically continue to emit increasing amounts of CO2 and other greenhouse gases into the atmosphere without eventually provoking unacceptable climate change? Scientists will overwhelmingly agree that the answer is no. The basic science, first principles, and directions of causality are very clear. Svante Arrhenius discovered the basic chemistry a century ago. Focusing on that creates a world of relative certainty, at least as to the thrust and direction of basic policy. It's true, the rates and sequences and valuations are uncertain and still subject to debate. But as long as we focus on measuring these inherently uncertain empirical consequences, rather than on the certain first principles that cause them, then we will overwhelm the reasons to do something now with ditherings about what we might someday consider doing if the evidence is ever sufficiently compelling. I'm afraid that once the evidence is really compelling, then our response will also be compelled, and we won't really have much of a choice left. To make the point more simply, if you jump out of an airplane, you need a crude parachute more than an accurate altimeter. And if you also take an altimeter with you, at least don't become so bemused in tracking your descent that you forget to pull the rip card. So the first general principle that I want to suggest is, let's base policy on well-known first principles. Do not wait for exact empirical measurement.